Starting with our first seminar, joining us from US Bank is Wendy McGrane, who will be moderating a panel discussion on best practices for entrepreneurs in the face of banking volatility. Wendy is a Bend-based business leader, currently managing a team of 12 business bankers at US Bank throughout Central, Eastern, and Southern Oregon. Wendy and her team of bankers serve businesses and financing solutions to help them manage cash flow, acquire assets, and grow their operations. She has been described by her clients and colleagues as inspirational, dedicated, and a true connector. At US Bank, she has served in numerous leadership roles, and she is currently a voting member of the Oregon Growth Board. Wendy is a graduate of the Pacific Coast Banking School and earned her bachelor's degree in international political economy from the Colorado College. Before Wendy found her calling as a banker, she worked in municipal finance, accounting, both domestically and internationally. And joining her are panelists Kailey, Vice President Small Business Specialist at US Bank, Tonya Bernardy, Vice President Treasury Management and Payment Consultant at US Bank, and Karen Anderson, CFO of Onboard Dynamics. Rita, I'm so happy. Pinch hitter, pinch me, Rita. The day just got so much better. Okay, Rita Hansen is going to be stepping in, filling in the gaps. You didn't tell me when we were chatting before the event, but I think this works just fine. Okay, so it'll be Rita, everyone, Rita Hansen, who's amazing. And if you don't know her yet, make a chance or make a point of talking to her this conference. She's amazing. Okay, seminar, are you ready? Let's take it away.
Thanks, Shannon. Please have a seat, panelists. And yes, we've already had to adapt. Unfortunately, Karen was unable to be here, but we're very lucky that Rita was able to pinch hit for her today. As Shannon introduced, I'm Wendy McGrane with US Bank. And as a title sponsor of this event every year, we're thrilled to be back. This is our 9th year sponsoring Bend Venture Conference. And of course, we're thrilled that we're celebrating 20 years of Bend Venture Conference in this community. It's really my favorite business event of the year. And I'm so excited about all the networking and connections we're all going to be able to make over the next couple of days. In thinking about what is happening in the world today, what has happened in 2023, and what might be relevant to the audience that attends the Bend Venture Conference this year, we decided that we should touch on, as most of you are probably familiar, we had some really major volatility that happened in the banking industry earlier this year. And arguably, it impacted certain sectors and industries and early stage companies, probably more so than others. And we thought, okay, what could we bring to the table that might be relevant to this audience? Really just to share from an educational perspective of how all of you as entrepreneurs can position yourselves to not have the panic and disruption that you may have experienced earlier this year, and how can we help? So that's where we came up with the title of Best Practices for Entrepreneurs in the Face of Banking Volatility. This session is just intended specifically to help all entrepreneurs think about how you can position yourself so you don't have that panic. We know as entrepreneurs, you're busy trying to run your business, grow your business, raise your funding. You have so many other priorities. Nobody expected to also have to change banks suddenly in March or April timeframe this year. So we wanted to bring together a panel of people who can share experience and best practices. And we're really hoping that if you have questions and you want to share your experience, this can be an inclusive discussion. We want you to be able to share and ask questions of us. So to move forward, I think just to add relevancy to this, high level, what happened that caused so much volatility in banking earlier this year? Many of you may already know this, so I don't want to get into the weeds, but just high level, we saw when COVID began, many different businesses, particularly businesses in the tech industry, really grew their deposits during COVID because they were thriving. They also got PPP funding, and as a result, banks who did a lot of businesses with those types of businesses experienced a huge growth at rapid rates in their deposits, and they had to do something with those deposits. So banks don't just benefit from having a ton of deposits on their balance sheet. They need to lend that money out. They need to invest it in some way. So some banks, because their deposits grew at such rapid rates, had to find a way to place those deposits. And if they weren't able to lend out at those rapid growth rates, they purchased things like long-term Treasury bonds in order to capitalize on those increased deposits. So that was all. You could argue, those decisions may have been good or bad decisions by those banks, but it caused a situation where interest rates were very low at that time, right? So we've all seen the interest rate environment increase over the last couple of years, and the Federal Reserve was increasing those rates to curb inflation. But as that happened in those long-term bonds and other investments that some of these banks participated in to place those deposits, the value of those assets decreased because of the rising interest rate environment. Coupled with that, a lot of their customers were experiencing increased borrowing costs, so they were actually starting to pull money out of the bank to meet their own liquidity needs. And as that happened, we kind of came to a pretty critical point in March where a lot of depositors were seeing that we kind of had the balance sheet of some of these banks was challenged. And the depositors also at a lot of these banks had deposits that were well in excess of FDIC insurance coverage. There were really high percentages of depositors that would not be protected if something happened to those banks. Many of you guys may realize that the FDIC deposit insurance coverage is at $250,000. So banks that have a ton of depositors that are well in excess of that could be at risk if their depositors and investors are concerned about the liquidity of the bank and the success of the bank. And so what we saw happen is some banks, in order to raise the cash they needed to pay out the depositors who were getting concerned, sold some of those bonds at losses, and it caused a run on some banks. And that's just high level. I don't want to get into the weeds on this. What I want to do is translate it to what happened in the real world for those of us who are business owners who may have had to change banks because their bank suddenly shut down, because that's what happened. And we saw a lot of panic and concern by that. And this is not something that any of us wanted to see happen in the banking industry, even though some of these banks might have been our competitors. We want all businesses to thrive. We want all businesses to succeed, and we don't want a bank shutting down to shut down a business simply because of that, right? So something that we did at US Bank is we went all hands on deck. As this was happening in real time, we brought together our leadership. We were meeting over the weekend trying to figure out how can we support these businesses that need to have a bank to be able to continue operating. We modified our processes to speed up the due diligence that we typically do when we're onboarding customers. We fast-tracked the onboarding of all of our payments and treasury management services so that we could keep these businesses running in a time of critical need. So that's just my perspective and my experience, and I know many banks across the country and the world did the same thing, because ultimately we need that cycle to continue. We don't want any businesses going out of business. We don't want any disruption for bank customers simply because a bank is challenged, right? So what I'd like to do here is I want to introduce our panelists, and we're going to share some experiences and best practices. So hopefully this never happens again, but in the case it does, you can position your businesses to be able to move quickly, and you can position your businesses to be able to continue operating in the face of unusual banking volatility. So to start with introducing my panelists, we have Rita Hansen with Onboard Dynamics. Rita is the CEO and co-founder of Onboard, which is a Bend-based company whose goal is to support the natural gas ecosystem in reducing greenhouse gas emissions safely and reliably through innovative and practical commercial solutions. Onboard just celebrated its 10th anniversary last week. Congratulations. And I remember when Onboard pitched, Rita pitched 10 years ago at Bend Venture Conference. So here you are again sharing some experience, which we're so grateful to have you participate in this. And Onboard just learned yesterday that they're being recognized as one of Central Oregon's fastest growing companies. So congratulations, Rita. Rita has over 30 years of executive management, engineering, and operations management experience, as well as project management experience in a diverse range of industries. Since 2006, she has specialized in early phase and high growth environments, which focus on global opportunities in the energy and environmental sectors. Thanks for being here, Rita. And then next to Rita, we have my colleague, Kailey. Bree is a Bend-based small business banking manager with U.S. Bank, overseeing 10 small business specialists in the Central and Eastern and Southern Oregon markets. She and her team work with businesses to establish new banking relationships, and they help grow our existing business clients. She's got 18 years of experience with U.S. Bank, and she brings vast knowledge and energy to her team and to her clients. Outside of work, you can find Bree cheering on her daughter at volleyball games, her son at flag football, or barbecuing with friends and family. And then next to Bree, we've got Tonya Bernardy, another colleague of mine who's our treasury management and payment consultant with the bank, and she's got over 25 years of experience in banking. She works with all of the business clients we have in Central and Eastern Oregon and helps them with their payment processes. And she currently also serves in the community as the president of the Mount Bachelor Rotary Club. And Tonya lives in Bend here with her husband and is a recent empty nester. So thank you all for being here. And I've got some questions I'm gonna ask, and I'm gonna just encourage all of you who are here, as you have questions, to raise your hand as we go through this. So to start with, I wanna start with Rita. Rita, can you share your experience as an entrepreneur as to what happened in March of this year?
Yes, I can share because it's probably one of those business life experiences you hope you never have to repeat. We were an SVB customer, and I'm here to tell you I am actually the CEO, co-founder who formed that relationship with SVB because I came from Portland. I was working with other alternative energy companies. SVB was a great partner and still today is a great partner, but I can tell you that in all of the ups and downs and valleys of life as an entrepreneur, you would never think you would have to deal with a situation of, oh crap, our bank, I can't access my account. We learned from our major equity sponsor, BP Energy Partners down in Dallas, Texas. They gave Karen a call, said, hey, are you following the news? There's a little bit of uncertainty happening with SVB. We think that people are actually doing a run on the bank. This was like, I think, Wednesday night. Thursday, we were like, maybe we should try to pull out our money. What are we going to do with that money? Well, Karen, here's my bank account number. We really were trying to brainstorm what should we do. Because we were well over the $250,000 FDIC insurance amount. So we started making phone calls. We started saying, well, what should we do? And this will be all, we really didn't know how bad the problem was going to be. We just thought, well, let's just start doing some inquiries. Well, by Friday, we knew the situation was pretty desperate. And we knew we had payroll coming. We knew that we had bills to be paying. We are in a growth phase of our company. We are writing checks out to our vendors, as these ladies can tell you, that we are absolutely, blowing and going. And so to not be able to log into your bank account and see your amount, your cash balance is a pretty desperate feeling as an entrepreneur. When you have 40 people on your staff, you know you need to make payroll, and we were already starting to see and hear and read about what was happening all around the country, what was happening all around the world because of what was happening with SVB. And they shut down the bank, I think, at 9 o'clock that morning on Friday. It was the longest weekend ever. And we at Onboard Dynamics are one of the companies that was onboarded by US Bank over the weekend. I can't tell you how grateful I am that we are in Bend, Oregon, and that we had this relationship that my CFO was able to pick up the phone and make a phone call, and we knew we were going to be taken care of. I can't even describe to you that feeling as an entrepreneur to know that by Monday we would be okay. I don't know what else to say, Wendy. I mean, this is actually a blessing to me that I get to pinch hit for Karen to be able to say to you, eyeball to eyeball, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now, we still have a very, very great relationship with SVB. I can tell you that Jane, I know Jane will probably be here, she was so devastated at what happened, and she's still there, and she still supports us, and we will never have all of our eggs in one basket. And if I were to give any advice to any entrepreneur that's sitting in this room, whatever you do, open up at least 2 bank accounts, 2 different banks, and make sure that with one of those banks, you can walk down the street and walk into their doors. Because there's nothing, as much as everything is going digital and remote, and banks are actually closing up their brick and mortar, which I think is just terrible, especially in small communities. The ability to be able to walk in and, well, I'm a hugger, so it's like, but to be able to shake their hands and talk to them face to face and be able to say, here's what we're experiencing as an entrepreneur, it's so underrated, that ability to have that personal relationship. So we're very fortunate. I think we were one of the lucky ones that Karen just knew who to call. And in your organ, well, of course we always know Wendy, but Karen knew to go right to the top here in the Pacific Northwest. And our board, oh my God, I mean they just they were flabbergasted that these dudes down in Texas were going, hey, we got this. I mean, because they all banked with SVB.
Okay.
Our board, our BP Energy partners, that SVB was their bank. Yeah. And so they were all panicked. And was like, well, we're covered. We're good. We got this. We'll be able to open up an account. Now we have to be able to get that money out. And,
right.
But we knew our partners were all positioned and ready to, if we need to get you some money, if you can't get into those SVB funds, we'll make sure that you've got your payroll covered and everything else. So like I say, we were very, very lucky. It was amazing to me to watch how the entrepreneurial community, especially in the Pacific Northwest, who were all banking with SVB, just rallied together. I mean, I was just blown away by how we were all sharing. For those of you that are Portland Seed Fund companies, there is within our network of Portland Seed Fund, Jen's not here, but Portland Seed Fund, they actually have a network, a one email address, and we're all copied on it. And over the weekend, I mean, Wendy, it's like, hey, here's what we're doing, here's what we're doing, here's what we're doing. And we were just all sharing our little internal best practices of what we were doing and how we were trying to take care of ourselves. One more story, and then I'll pass it on. But so we were supposed to have done something that weekend with my parents. And I remember calling my mom and dad saying, well, yeah, I can't do this. Sorry, Mom, Dad, I've got this disaster happening. And my mom's like, well, why, what? And I was like, well, we bank at SVB. Oh, you're one of those kind of companies? Because somehow in her world, the media was painting us as like we were like the next Elon Musk or something. And I was just like, no, Mom, we're one of their companies that, SVB supported, 10 years ago. I mean, we're not one of those high-techy companies.
Yeah.
Because she had this vision that, those people deserve it. I was like, no, they don't.
Yeah, right.
So anyway, It was really interesting how the media was painting the companies that SVB was banking.
Sure.
I mean, who was banking with them. It was really interesting to get that perspective. It's like, no, Mom, actually, they support climate tech companies.
Sure.
Which is, was great.
Yeah.
It still is.
Yes,
So.
and thank you for sharing so much, Rita. I mean, you answered all the questions I was going to ask you in that first question, and I'm not surprised at all. And really, that brings us back to, again, our purpose for this conversation is really to help prevent that panic and stress that you've experienced. This is not about criticizing any other banks, because all banks have great things that they do for their clients in the community. It's truly just to hopefully prepare us all in the face of future volatility, so that we are preventing that high level of panic and stress for you guys, and we're keeping your businesses operating, and so that nobody has to close their doors. So that's why we're having this conversation today. And again, we are thrilled to be able to have feedback and questions from all of you as we go through this. So thank you, Rita. I'm going to move on to Bree. So as a business owner, if I have to quickly change banks, what are some tips and some guidance that you can share of how can I be best positioned to do that? And in my, just in my normal business hygiene, please share with us your knowledge.
Great question. Great story. Thank you for sharing. I know that was a very stressful time for a lot of people, so we really appreciate you sharing your experience. So Rita did touch on quite a few things. I think the first thing to start with is, who is your business banker? If you have an existing relationship and you do not know who your business banker is, find out who that is. Get to know them, build that relationship, right? Okay, so that's first of all. Second of all is having all your ducks in a row. So what do I mean by that? Having your Secretary of State updated, active, current, having your operating agreement available, accessible, or bylaws, whatever you have on file. Your tax ID number. Again, some of these things sound real simple. The team that I manage, we open up accounts daily for all sorts of business clients, and a lot of times people don't have this information on hand. They don't know. So again, to be best prepared, have all your stuff together, organized in a binder, locked in a safe, obviously, because this is important, or in a file that you can print off easily. What type of entity are you? An LLC, an S Corp? Again, some of this may sound real basic, but a lot of people don't know. This will be on your tax return if you are an existing business, but if you're a startup, this is, again, is something you want to talk to a CPA about, or your attorney when you're coming up with your business and determining everything and what works best for you. Signer information. So again, a lot of times we have multiple signers on business accounts. Having that information readily available to give to your banker or to a bank to get them quickly added to an account is super helpful as well. Rita mentioned having a network, you guys. If you own a business, networking at these different events, getting to know other banks, other CPAs, just other individuals in the community, other business owners. Who do you do your banking with? Do you have a great business banker? Who's your CPA? Have those conversations, because you really don't know when something could change and you may need to pivot quickly. So those are some just real quick, off the cusp things that we would highly recommend every business to have dialed in and ready to go.
Yeah, I'll just add, when you mention every business has a bank, right? So it should be pretty easy for you to go to your bank and make sure that you have your current contact person who's your primary contact at the bank. If you are struggling with that and you're not making that contact, talk to Bree and the team and we'll get you acquainted with someone. But it's really important. You know, a lot of entrepreneurs, you might have set up your business bank account because you have a personal bank account at your bank, right? And maybe you didn't get connected with a business banker immediately when you did that. But every bank has business bankers, and we want to get you connected with someone. So start with your own bank, but if you're struggling, we'd love to talk to you. All right, let's move on to Tonya. So Tonya, I'm an entrepreneur, and you know, hopefully this never happens to me, but if my bank suddenly closes its doors, how can I be best positioned to make payments to my employees, to my vendors, and what are the alternatives for money movement if my bank fails?
That's a great question. You know, and kind of working through this with a lot of businesses, or several businesses, last spring, we kind of went through this experience. So one of the things that I just want to start with, as Rita really touched on, is making sure you have good record keeping of who you are making payments to. That's one of the first things I really want to touch on, is if you are keeping these records in your online platform, that's really important to make sure that you're keeping this outside of your online platform, so bill pay, et cetera. So that's one thing I really want to touch on. But alternatively, you know, keeping that information outside of your online platform, but being able to pivot to alternative payment methods, such as pivoting to checks. So do you have those alternative ways to pay employees? Do you have addresses? Do you have contact informations to pay vendors? Addresses, phone numbers, emails, a good base of information to send those details out. So keeping good records. How are you going to pay your employees, as Rita did touch on? That's one of the things that really did pop up quite a bit. So just keeping clear records, a quick temporary payment alternative. And that's one of the biggest things that we really did kind of have to overcome.
Great, thanks, Tonya. Any questions from the audience before we move on to the next set of questions, or any lived experience that you want to touch on that we can learn from as we go through this set of questions? Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah, and so maybe I'll repeat the question just so people can hear. She asked the question of, in the past, as she advises businesses, especially startups, she was steering them to some of these banks like SVB because they were more nimble and had easier platforms for opening accounts and things like that and doing things digitally. And she steered them from going to larger banks with a perception that larger banks were still operating on a more conventional basis where you have to come in and the process is more clunky. Yeah, I'll definitely speak to that. I think I can certainly speak for US Bank, and I think it's probably fair to say that most banks really evolved very quickly because of COVID, when COVID happened, and figured out ways to do business remotely and more quickly. So, for example, with US Bank, we have a completely digital platform that is very similar to DocuSign that allows us to have our clients sign for accounts all digitally now. And so when you have businesses, maybe maybe the business has the two key people here located in our community, but there are other stakeholders who are going to be signers on the account who are in Texas or elsewhere. We have the ability to do all that digital signing and move it quickly. Then, on top of that, when particularly this volatility occurred earlier this year, we knew that just for the ecosystem of the businesses to thrive in all of the communities that we had to really expedite our due diligence process of meeting all the compliance, et cetera, to be able to onboard businesses. And we quickly pivoted to be able to fast track that so that we could bring on these customers quickly that we knew needed to be operating a banking account. And again, I can't speak for all banks, but I think the general sentiment was all banks wanted all these businesses to keep going, right? And we were doing everything that we could and having daily calls with leadership to make that happen at US Bank. And I would guess all banks were really trying to make that happen. So hopefully this gives you more confidence, and we'd love the opportunity to support those clients that you've steered that other way, because we do have a lot of great ways to make things happen quickly, remotely, et cetera.
And Wendy, I'd like to great question and comment, and I love hearing that perspective. Our platform that you can open a business checking account online with one signer, I'll specify one signer, because if you have multiple signers, you have to send an email to whoever you want to be a signer, right? But for one signer, it takes 12 minutes to go through that process. So you mentioned hours in a branch. But again, the digital functions are amazing, but it's that personal touch, right? Having that relationship is so important. And I can't tell you, some of my close friends now were business owners, and we see so many different things happen working with so many different businesses that, not that we're, consultants per se, but we see a lot of things happen. We hear about things. So we're always a good resource to turn to here's what's going on. Have you heard about this, right? So that relationship is key, but we do have amazing digital capabilities for sure. Great question.
Yes.
So in regards to your money's being insured by FDIC, so say we have $1 million in the account. Are you saying it would be smart to have 4 different accounts at $250 each and scalable based on that?
So great question, and that's one of the questions that I was planning to ask Tonya. So I think what I'll do is I'll have Tonya answer your question, and really the question we prepared for the panel was, what are my options as a business owner for FDIC insurance protection? So Tonya, take it away.
That's a really great question. So first and foremost, you should have an investment policy in place, so whatever your threshold is there. But each tax ID number is insured up to $250,000. So some entities will create different entities for that insurance purpose. However, some financial institutions do have the ability to insure for, they do have options to insure for higher limits. So for example, US Bank does have the ability to create insurance up to $100 million. So you just need to have a conversation with your banker to see what options you have available to you. So again, I would just have a conversation. That's a great question.
Yes.
I'm curious, Rita, could you share, a little bit more about if you're dating your next banker? Like, what have you learned in terms of doing your due diligence, or what we should think about as a small startup with getting close to that 250, 300,000, and and I'm nervous. Like, I don't want to ever not be able to pay my employees again. Like, what would you recommend to those of us in the room? Like, hey, we're gonna, you mentioned opening multiple accounts. What do you now do with your due diligence when you're evaluating banks? Even though you can't predict the future, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. And so I'll talk about this in terms of, okay, think of like 10x the 250,000. Okay, so 10x the 250,000. And it's not like we're going to go, because as you're raising money, and if you're really lucky, you'll close a round, and maybe you'll close a round of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 30 million, whatever the number is. And then all of a sudden you're going, oh my gosh, okay. And you get those funds, and you're going, well, and you're just like, you're growing. So you know you're going to spend that, money in the next, let's say, 12 to 24 months. We have done a little bit of what Tonya's recommended, as far as we actually have several different tax ID numbers, so we have several different entities. Like I say, we've definitely, we bank at 2 banks now. We have SVB. We love the fact that, the reason we went with SVB, so I'm going to put a little plug in for SVB here. The reason we went with them is because I had a really solid relationship based on my previous startups that I was working with in Portland. And they also had tools. They had online tools that were pretty sophisticated. Like you could have your QuickBooks, and your QuickBooks was talking to MineralTree, and you could actually and it just was all married together. It was, Steve, who was my former CFO, he loved it. So we had a lot of great things happening. So you really, so for me, it was just you pick your bank, and you just never think that 10 years later you're going to be dealing with, oh my God. But now, because of my board, we actually have a Treasury. This is also another piece of advice from me, is that, your board should be asking for your Treasury management plan. What is your Treasury management plan? Where are you putting all these funds? All of your investors should care. I tell you, my next investor update after this happened was, here's what we're doing. Yes, we were one of them. I got contacted over that weekend by so many investors. Where's your money? Hate to tell you where it is right now, so we definitely have a Treasury management plan now. Tonya works very closely with, our CFO. We've set up separate entities. We're making sure that we are fully protected. And let me tell you, I read about somebody had like 50 different accounts. I don't have resources to manage 50 different accounts. Could you imagine taking $250,000 and spreading it across 50 different accounts? That was some famous basketball player. I don't know if you guys ever read that story, but he had all of his money, spread across 50 different accounts. Who has that kind of, as an entrepreneur, a small startup, who has those kind of people? So we rely on our banking partners here. So when you're dating your banker, it's like, what can you do for me to protect my funds? What should I be doing? What kind of resources are they giving you? What kind of advice are they giving you? And then you do have to look at the other tools that they provide you with. What kind of credit card deals they're giving you. We have a bunch of company credit cards. So you want to look at all of it and say, okay, well, we're going to do this kind of business with this bank, and then with this kind of business, we're going to do, this is how we're going to separate the relationships. And then, but we're transferring money all the time, let me tell you.
I actually have 2 questions. First of all, thank you for sharing. Rita, you just mentioned the Treasury management plan, and you had mentioned the investment policies. Are those kind of on the same, one and the same?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's kind of the same.
They're probably the same. My board called it I got the phone calls like, Rita, at the next board meeting, you better have a Treasury management plan. And it's something that the board should approve. You want to just, if you operate in that kind of a structure, even an advisory board, just get some other eyes on it so that you can sleep at night.
And then my second question was, you guys have been talking about the FDIC insurance limits. With that, there are options available through these online platforms like Mercury or Brex, and they distribute the funds amongst a large number of individual banks. And you had mentioned there's an option where you guys can increase your FDIC. How do you guys? Is it a similar structure, or how?
So I can
ahead,
speak to
Tonya,
that.
yeah.
So at US Bank, we work with a division in US Bank called the Money Center, and we have something called an insured cash sweep. So what we do, and I'll just tell you what we have. It's basically a pooled money market that spreads it out between many banks. And that's how we insure those funds. We do not charge our customers additional funds to do this. It's just a service that we offer our business customers to make sure that they're secure.
And it's called different things, Dean, but that's exactly what I was talking about. When you're dating your banker, you ask them, what do you have
Absolutely.
that's available to me to make sure that if I close my round and I'm going to get $4 million, what are you going to do with that $4 million? Because I want to deposit it, okay, so me, I'd put 2 here and 2 there. But with, just make sure that, that you understand exactly what they're doing so that if something like this goes down again, that you are protected.
Yep.
I love the discussion, and we are pressed for time. We literally have not covered everything that we wanted to, so my ask of all of you is we have a ton of team members from US Bank that are going to be around all day today and tomorrow. We would gladly answer your questions. We'd love to talk to you about this. I think the shared experience, and I mean, there are other entrepreneurs who've been through this, like Rita, and we want you all to thrive if you end up with any challenges with your bank. So let us help you, and thank you everyone for your engagement. Thank you, Rita, Bree, and Tonya. This has been really helpful, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day here at BVC. Thanks, everybody.